Hey everybody, welcome to Example of Play, the home for strategy, tactics, and more. Today I'm very excited to start a new tutorial series. This is going to be for Campaign Series Vietnam, the tactical Vietnam era war game from Matrix Games. This game has been around for several years, but it just got a big update. They're calling it the 2.0 update. It's like they're calling it the remastered version of the game, which is pretty cool, I think, to see a game like this get such a facelift where it's looking better than ever. The UI has been improved. Basically, every facet of the game has been updated or improved in some way, so it's the best it's ever been right now. And I figured it was a great time for me to jump in because I'd been eyeballing it for a long time, but this is a great time to try it out. And then I want to help you, if you're interested in the game, to see the game played a little bit and get into it yourself. The game comes with a series of boot camp missions with the manual explaining how to step through those, how to play them. But I figured I would try to do some videos on it to compress all that down even further to get you into the game, just knowing what you need to know from each of these videos to make your way through the boot camp campaign and then on to playing the full scenarios yourself in as little time as possible. So let's jump right into it, and we'll start with boot camp 1. Okay, so we'll step back real quick to whenever this is what you'll see when you first start up the game. This is where you pick what scenario you want. There are something like 100 scenarios in the game that span from 1948 to 1971, so it covers a really broad scope of the conflict, not just the direct U.S. involvement, but a lot of stuff from before that as well. But we are going to be looking for the boot camp campaign, so you can sort it by campaign or title, but we're looking for boot camp 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Of course, we're going to start with 1. We'll just leave all the other settings the way they are, and we'll hit OK, which will then bring up this screen. So we're just going to not touch anything. There's optional rules. There's different difficulty options here, but we're going to leave it on the default. We're playing side A, leave enhanced fog of war and reporting on, and we'll just hit OK. And then this will load us into the scenario where we will get our orders, our briefing here. You can read through all that yourself, but basically this is going to give you the situation and what your mission is, what you're trying to do. One thing to note is that this game does feature civilian units in the field at times. Not every scenario has them, but this one does. And you want to avoid causing civilian casualties because that will affect your victory score. So we'll see civilians in this mission. So that's something to be aware of. Not every war game has something like that. And it does add a little twist, especially when a non-friendly civilians show up on the field and you have to think about what to do about them, avoiding them, or fighting around them. We'll hit OK to get into the scenario. We'll see side A, that's us. It's our turn. There's 12 turns in this scenario. And then we'll look around at the UI here real quick. So to start with, I'm going to go through the UI, but I don't want to exhaustively look at every single part of it because that would be boring. And we only need to know a little bit to get through this mission, and the rest we'll just learn as we go. But the real quick version is you got your view here. You can use your mouse wheel to change to, I think there's 9 different zoom levels. So you can zoom way out. We can see we're on this huge map, even though we're only going to use a small portion of it. You can also keep going and you'll get this 2D view, kind of classic war game counters type view. So if you want to play with that, it's there. You can also go up in the options. You can change like what the counters look like and that sort of thing. But we're just going to leave it on the nice new 3D view that looks really nice. If you come up here across the top, there's all kinds of options for buttons. A lot of these are also buttons down here. They all have hotkeys that you can see listed out. I'm not going to try to mention too many hotkeys to you. You can see them yourself and just learn the ones you want to learn. But one thing is you might want to come down to options here. There's a lot of things you can set to customize the UI the way you like it, to change like what the counters look like, stuff like that. One thing I like to do is turn off this beep on air because I find it really annoying. It gives you like that Windows beep error sound whenever you click and you can't do something. So I turn that one off. And then there's a whole bunch of options there. If you need help, you can go to the manual, and that'll pull up the manual, which includes the information I'm going to be getting for going through this boot camp. It steps you through it in detail, so definitely take a look at that if you need to. And then down across the bottom, we've got all kinds of buttons again. A bunch of these are the same that are up there, but we just have them visually here. If you hit all, you can see all the buttons. You can sort them by different categories. If you just need to see, you're looking for a particular thing, like all the air buttons are right here together, combat's all here together, but there's nicely a common category that's going to give you all the most frequently used ones, so we'll just leave it on that for now. And then over here is where you hit end turn to end the turn. So that's important to know where that is, and also where you can save your game. On the left hand side, you've got, this is where you get details on the hex you have selected. So if you have nothing in it, the hex, you'll just get information about the terrain there, what it looks like, what its values are. If you select one where there's a unit, you'll see the unit here. You can click on it here to select it. You can select different units individually. You can double click on the hex to select all the units in it, or you can click on the unit directly to select it. Though I found this is a little tricky. You have to click the little crosshair like right on the actual model of the person there, like this platoon. If you click in between the soldiers, it doesn't select them. You got to click like right on the little guys. So something to know if you're having trouble selecting them that way is you got to click right on the little guy. Whenever you select units, you're going to see these yellow hexes pop up. So the default is that you're seeing the hexes that they can move to, which I think makes the most sense. But if you want to change that, that's these buttons right here. It defaults to reachable hexes, but you can change it to show range, to show visible hexes, what they can see, or you can change it to show command range, like for your leader units. So a few things there, but I like to leave it just on movement, reachable hexes, or you can hit the hotkey H to go back to that. I think that's kind of all we need to know to start, and then now let's get our units moving. Well, actually, before we move, we should know where we're going. So let's look at what our mission is really quick. We'll zoom out, and if we look at the mission briefing, it describes it. Basically, we are leading one company of U.S. Army infantry. This our guys right here. We got 3 platoons and a leader, and our mission is to move down this road from this Dacto 1 airfield over here to this Dacto 2 airfield and take these objective markers to take control of that airfield and lock it down for future operations. So pretty simple. Go down the road, secure the airfield. Easy enough. One other thing UI wise that I want to cover is that if you select a unit and you hit F2, you get this nice unit handbook pop up. And so this gives you all the stats on the unit. So it gives you all their like movement values, all kinds of information here, everything you could possibly want to know. This chart right here is really useful because it shows you their damage across different ranges. So the blue is their attack against soft targets, so like other infantry, and the red is their attack against hard targets like armor and that sort of thing. And so as you can see, as it goes out to 4 hexes, the damage drops off with the range increasing. Makes sense. What I really like is that over here you get this like plain language description of what this unit is and what it should be used for, and just a little description, like historical data about it. But I like that because in a lot of war games, you know, even if you're someone who is familiar with the conflict, you might not know what every single unit is. And so being able to just click and get like some plain language, like this is what this is and this is kind of what it's for, is here. And then also there's some capabilities listed here, which it doesn't give you details on what all these mean, but you can look them up in the manual if you need to, if the ones that aren't obvious. So that's F2 to bring up this screen, which is very handy. And now our first goal is just to move down the road. So we'll double click this hex and that'll select this platoon and our leader. And then we'll just right click to move up the road a little bit. And when you do, you get this message saying, wow, great job, you moved up the road. And then it'll tell you kind of what to do next, which is to keep moving down the road and bring along the rest of your company. And then again, yep, we're still going down the road. Keep your company together. Don't get all spread out. And as you can see, as we move, those yellow hexes get smaller because our movement range goes down. Go back and select these guys. We'll move them up behind. And so our company is marching down the road. If we look around, we see there's also some other units here. Some of these are civilians, which we obviously don't have any control over right now. And then some of them are the CIDG forces that are holding this camp here. And right now they're locked. We can't move them. So later in the scenario, we might get control of them. We'll see what happens. But that's your first turn. Wow. All right, so we'll hit end turn. We've moved up the road a little bit. And then it'll ask you to save the game. So you can hit save. You can change the name if you want to. Then the enemy gets a turn, and then it's going to tell us, okay, we're going into turn 2. Here's some more information. I'll let you read that yourself, basically giving some advice on going and taking the objective hexes, which if we look, we can see we didn't get any report because nothing happened. If we look down the field, we can see that this first hex at this little village, it has a 5 on it, so it's worth 5 victory points. And those victory points are per turn, basically. So you want, if the longer you hold it, you get that many points every turn you're holding it. But those values can change over the course of the scenario. So if we look over here, these are all at 0. So right now, our only objective is to get to this first village and take it first thing, because that's the only thing that's giving us victory points right now. So that's our focus for the moment. All right, now for turn 2, we're going to keep on heading down the road, and we'll introduce one new concept as we go. We'll double left click to select our lead group here, and then right click on down the road. Keep them moving. And then same thing, these guys. Now when we select them, we see that they're going to fall behind a little bit. They can't quite get to this hex behind those guys because they're moving uphill here. For whatever reason, their movement range isn't going to take them that far. So if we want to move a little further, we can have them double time. So if we click this button right here or Control Q, you'll switch to double time mode. And as soon as you do that, you'll see up here they get this icon showing their double timing. You see that their movement range extended in all directions a bit. They can go 2 hexes further. We'll move them up. But the downside of this, which this doesn't always happen, but it can happen, we have this little yellow F popped up here. That means that this unit is now fatigued. Basically, they're moving faster, so they got a little tired. That doesn't always happen. It depends on the unit type, how much its training level, things like that. So it could happen or not happen whenever you do it. But we'll have these guys do the same and see if they get the same results. Okay, they did too. The funny thing was I recorded this before and neither one got fatigued. So it's just kind of variable. It just depends. But whenever they're fatigued, that cuts their attack and assault value in half. But after one turn, they should become unfatigued and go back to normal if you don't keep double time them, obviously. And so that is kind of a little trade-off of using that double time to move a little faster, but they're going to be tired at the end of that turn and they're not going to be attacking as well until they recover. That's basically it for turn 2. We're a little bit closer to our first objective, but then we'll just hit end turn. Now we get another message basically telling us, yep, we're moving down the road. It's talking about line of sight a little bit. So we'll show you how you can see that. And then you can read through the rest of that yourself. We'll cover most of that. Now for turn 3, we'll keep moving on down the road and we'll also talk about opportunity fire. So first we'll select our units. We'll move them as far as they can. They're almost to the objective when they get here. It talks about the double time option there, but we've already done that. And we'll see if we run into anything. Nope, they arrive safely. We'll have these guys move down the road as well. And as you can see, they're still fatigued for this turn. And these guys come along as well. Now, as we are expecting that we might be in combat soon, we'll talk about opportunity fire. So that's whenever your units are going to automatically fire back on the enemy's turn. And these units won't do that this turn because they've already used up all their action points. So right now it's empty, but if you noticed before, there's this red bar right here. And each unit starts the turn with that full. It goes down as they move, depending on the terrain that they move through. And this little white line is an indicator of how much of that bar it takes for them to fire. So our rifle platoons here, they're actually capable, if they're at full action points, they can usually fire 3 times on one turn. But as they move, that goes down. So that little white bar, if you stay above it, it is enough that they would be able to still fire, and also that they would have enough action points left to opportunity fire on the enemy turn. So as we move into this territory where we expect we might run into the enemy, one thing to think about is, do I want to use all my action points to move, or should I save some in case the enemy shows up and I want to get off an opportunity shot at them, fire at them as they move? You can guarantee that you'll save enough to do that if you come down here. So you have this button here with the gun. It says save APs for firing. There's also save APs for unloading and save APs for recon. All that we're really worried about right now is this one. It's Control F if you wanted to turn that on. Obviously, it's too late this turn because they've already used up all their points. But you could turn that on, and then that'll limit how far they can move in exchange for guaranteeing that they'll still be able to fire at least once after their move. So that's something important to note. You'll also note that your leader can't fire So if you look up here, his fire is 0, and that's because he's like an officer leader unit who, even though it looks like he has a little gun in his picture, he doesn't actually participate in combat directly as far as adding firepower to it. Whereas your platoon has a fire rating of 32, so they've got a lot of firepower. That's just something to keep in mind. You don't want your leader to be by himself. A little side note there. And that'll end turn 3. All right, so we're almost to our first victory hex. It's talking about our company. You can read that for yourself. We've already kind of mentioned most of that. All right, and then let's get into turn 4. So turn 4 is another pretty simple one. So we'll look at one more thing in terms of opportunity fire. If you hit Control P, you get this dialog, opportunity fire box, and basically this is a global setting for how you want your units to do opportunity fire, like at what range you want them to engage. So you can set it, basically this is the type of unit and this is the type of target. It's like a little cross-reference. You can leave it on the default, which could be different per scenario. Usually it's going to be on long range for all of them, but if you wanted to fine tune it, like you want your units to save their opportunity fire till the enemy's closer, that kind of thing, you can do that if you want to. And then that'll apply globally, but you could also select individual units and hit the Control P, and you get the same dialogue, but it's specific to this unit. So if we look here, we see it's already set a little differently for this unit versus the global setting. So that's up to you if you want to fine tune it that much per unit or just set it on a global level and leave it alone. For this scenario, we don't really need to mess with it, but that's just there if you want to do that, have a little more control. We'll go ahead and move up and take this first objective. Get a dialogue telling us, yep, we did it. We will now get 5 victory points per turn for controlling this objective. We get the American flag there. So good job. We've taken our first objective, and then we'll bring up our units to keep advancing on the rest of them. We'll have these guys move on up. Now we could run into the enemy soon, so we'll think about slowing down and consolidating our forces, but we're not quite there yet. Like I mentioned before, you can hit V to see which hexes are visible. So since we're moving through this forest or jungle here, we can't see onto the objective, onto the airfield just yet, but also that means they can't see us approaching just yet. So that's why I'm still kind of moving up a little, and then we'll set up on the next couple turns to actually move on the objectives. And now we'll end the turn to go into turn 5. So this tells us, all right, let's move up to the airfield, consolidate our forces, move on the first objective there, and then also gives some information about doing organizational movement. So this is a special move where you can move all the units in a formation together instead of each one individually. So to do that, we find the one that is the company headquarters, which has a little radio icon we'll see, and then you hit the Z key. This will highlight all the units underneath it, and then we can hold down the Alt key to do movement, group movement in column movement, so they'll all like move down the road together, or hold down Shift to do echelon movement where they'll kind of move like in their current formation. So we can try that out. Come over here, we'll see that this infantry unit, this platoon, is the HQ unit because they have the radio. It's not the leader himself, it is this one because they've got the radio. And if we hit Z, it'll highlight all the units that are subordinate, so they're all part of the same organization. And then we'll try holding down Alt and right-clicking to see if they all move up the road together. So they'll all move up one at a time instead of us needing to select each unit individually, move them up the road. So depending on the scenario, which the last one there, they chose not to move. But depending on the scenario, that might be useful. You might not want to do that, especially when you have such few units like here. But if you have a ton of units, you might want to use that to move them all up together. As you can see, these guys, they all arrived in that hex together instead of moving up like one hex each. So it is an option there, but might play around with it a little bit to get a good handle on how it works before you send a whole company up together in one move. Now let's take this first hex. We'll notice now this one's worth 2 points, which changed when we took that hex. The other ones are still 0. So we'll send one platoon and the leader into that hex. We get a message saying, well done, we've taken this one, and now let's take the rest of the objectives to secure this airfield. So we'll move these guys into this little village here. Oh, and we see it pops up. There's some villagers there. We don't really know a lot about them, but they are some civilians, so we don't want to get into a shootout with them. They'll move those guys up, and now we're ready to move on to turn 6. Alright, so we'll head on into turn 6. Now things could get a little bit heated. Yep, we start taking some fire. You can see down here the results. No effect so far. Alright, and we get a little message here pointing out to us that the victory points are going to change. We'll look at that. We ran to that civilian unit, so the interesting thing about them is they're unfriendly civilians. We can't shoot them, obviously. That would be bad and lose those victory points and be immoral. But they give information to the enemy just by being there and can kind of like slow down your forces. So they're sort of an obstacle that you can't really do much about, which I think is really interesting, especially for the Vietnam setting, to have basically hostile civilians that you can't engage. You just have to work around that they're there. And so now we'll see, oh, another message. Yep, that's talking about the civilians. Okay, we took some fire, but we didn't see where it's coming from. We just know it's probably somewhere over here, but we need to move on to the rest of the airfield. We'll notice that this objective over here is now worth 0. So holding it, we still want to hold it, but it's not worth any points. This objective is still worth 2, but now these are all worth 5. So we want to get on the airfield and take it as soon as we can to get those 5-point victory points every turn. So I'm going to move these guys here, and we'll see that these obstacles popped up, basically showing that there's some kind of obstacles here that are slowing down our movement. We can't really do anything about them right now. In Boot Camp 2, you get combat engineers and you learn all about fortifications and stuff, but we'll get to that in the next video. For now, I'm just going to keep moving towards this fire base. And then likewise, I'm going to have these guys move onto the airfield. And then we get that little thing. They can't move here. It's kind of hard to see, but basically, I get a different view of it. That there's something on here that's blocking them. It's keeping them from, even though the hex is highlighted, they can't move there because it's got some kind of block, some kind of obstacles in the way. So then we'll grab our command group and see if we can go around that down to the end of the airfield. All right, and then that's turn 6, so now we're taking some more of the objectives. All right, so let's move on to turn 7. So we're taking some fire here. Even though the enemy units aren't being revealed, we can see where it's coming from. It talks about that. And then some Viet Cong show up back home and come running out of the jungle to take the first airfield, so we'll need to deal with that also here in a minute. But like I was saying, we could see that these units are being fired at from this hex and this hex. Even though the enemy unit's not spotted, we know that's where the fire's coming from. So we'll return fire at them here in a second. We'll go ahead and take this objective. And then you see it, now we can see there's obstacles there. That's what was blocking us from getting onto that hex. And then these guys will take the fire base. All right, so now we've secured all the objectives. We just need to hang on to them. So this talks about digging in, so we can use Control D or click this little shovel icon down here, and that will have the units dig in. But they can't do it right now, because if we click it, it's going to tell us at the bottom they've already moved this turn, so they can't dig in as a second action of the turn. It has to be their first action of the turn. But these guys can dig in. They are already here. If you select both of them, they won't, because your leader unit, he's not capable of digging in. So we'll just select the platoon and hit that. So now we get a little icon up here, a little shovel. So now they're digging in. And then doing that could expose them to opportunity fires, one thing to know. But basically, over the next few turns, hopefully they'll dig in and have increased defense values in that hex. And then these guys, they can't dig in either, but we can shoot at where the enemy was firing at us from. So we can shoot there. And then the way to shoot is to hold down Control, and you get this little crosshair. Well, the icon, the cursor changes to this crosshair. You can also come down and click down here to change to fire mode versus move mode, but I find it easier to just leave it on move mode and hold Control to fire. Kind of makes more sense to me. If we look up here, we see we still got the red line a little past the white marker, so we can fire one more time. We could hang on to that for opportunity fire, but the enemies across the river, we don't expect them to come at us. We want to shoot at them where they're at, so maybe they'll leave us alone. Then those guys can fire too. All right, so now we've secured all the objectives. We just need to hang on to them. So we'll go ahead and take this objective. And then we'll And then these guys, they're digging in, but we can still have them fire. And they're going to shoot at this village up here. So we get the unknown effects versus unknown targets, but hopefully we're suppressing the enemy, driving them off. All we need to do is hold this field. That's our objective. We don't need to go chasing after them and try to defeat them. We just need to hold what we got. Now, if we look back over here, these two Viet Cong units showed up and took the first airfield. Our CIDG units, they are still locked down. They have this little red F, so they can't move just yet, but here in a minute, on another turn, we'll get control over them. But that's turn 7, our first little venture into combat. All right, so let's move on to turn 8. So we're still taking some fire over there, so didn't drive them away just yet, so that's all right. Okay, so it's saying, yep, the Viet Cong showed up. They've taken the Dak To 1 airfield and are not moving off of it, so we'll need to deal with that. And it just talks about, in this scenario, the AI is very scripted, but in other scenarios, they're more adaptive. So that's one of the updates, was expanding the adaptiveness of the AI to deal with the situation and not be too predictable. But in this case, the AI is very tightly scripted because it's a training scenario. Now they are there. We still don't have control of these guys, I don't think. I'll have to wait another turn. So basically, we need to stay on our objective here with this company. We're not going to walk all the way back over there. We're going to leave that for the CIDG company back home, and we're going to keep digging in here. So I'm going to have these guys dig in. Click an icon, and then have these guys, I'll hit Control D. Dig in. Okay, so now everybody's digging in. We have the little shovels, and that's going to help them be more defensible here as soon as they get some positions prepared. But while they're doing it, they're also going to shoot back. So yeah, we still don't know if they're causing any damage. We haven't spotted the actual enemy yet, but that's okay. It makes us feel better to shoot at them and try to get them to get their heads down. If you're hearing that little beeping, it's because I'm being impatient and trying to click too fast before it's gone through the little cycle. Okay, that's about all we can do for turn 8, because we still don't have control of these units just yet. So we'll go ahead and move on to turn 9. Now, I don't want to jinx it, but so far we haven't taken any casualties, I don't think. They've all the shots have had no effect on us. But seemingly we've had no effect on them either. Alright, now our CIDG company should be released, and we're ready to move and take back the first airfield. And then, yeah, talking about using cover, firing at where we think the enemy is. We already know that. Alright, good. So now they're released from their fixed status, and we can try to get them into the fight. So now if we click on them, that little red F is gone, so then they're no longer fixed in place. They can move. We also now have control of these civilians here, so we'll have them move, get out of the way. We don't want them to get accidentally hit during the fighting. If we look, we have a couple platoons back here. We'll move them up, get ready to go in. And then this one, though, is the battalion HQ. They're still fixed. We're not going to send them into battle. And then these guys, they can't see the airfield, so I'm going to have them move into this village, start firing. And then if there's multiple enemies in that hex, we can select which one we want to fire at, but these are both basically the same. Yep, we've hit them. Very good. Yep, they're firing back. They didn't like that. No effect on our force, though. We're not going to move up until we're going to get consolidated, put some fire on them before we move out of this village and into open terrain, because that would be a bad idea. Then our guys back over here, we're just going to keep holding what we got. Keep firing at the suspected enemy positions. No, being impatient. Clicking too fast. Now, in a different scenario, we might be more aggressive and try to move on like that village, take it out or something. But our objective here is just to keep holding what we got. So we're not going to move out of our current nice dug-in positions. We're just going to keep shooting at the enemy. And then that'll end turn 9. That's all we can do for this turn. All right, so now we'll head into turn 10. Enemy's going to keep shooting at us. We're going to try to accomplish one more new thing before the end of the video, and the end of the scenario. Oh, those guys retreated. We'll have to send them back. Okay, so over here, we've pretty much got the situation secure. These guys we're going to send back onto the objective. We did finally spot the enemy unit here. It looked like there might have been some civilians there too, but now at least we can see the enemy, so we might have some better luck at hitting them. And one thing I don't think I mentioned before, if you hover over a target, you see those little numbers. So the 3, 6, that's like how much damage you could be doing. I think it's the hard, and then the slash, and then the soft potential damage. Because if you remember, if we hit F2 and look at that, this is give us a little chart of over how much range, how much potential damage they can do. So you can see that as well whenever you have a target. But unfortunately there, we didn't seem to do much to them. Now over here, before the end of the scenario, we got 3 turns left for these guys. We're gonna try to retake this airfield using these 2 platoons. So we'll move these guys up. And we're gonna try to do an assault if we can pull it off. So we're going to try to soften up the enemy whenever you do an assault. What we've been doing so far is ranged fire, where we're shooting at them from a distance. We're going to try to move up to the hex adjacent to them and then move into their hex. Rather than doing the attack with the control, we're going to just move into a hex occupied by the enemy. That triggers an assault, which is like a special kind of attack. It's sort of a high risk, high reward, because your units are going to close with the enemy, try to force them out of that hex. So before you do that, you want to try to soften up the enemy as much as possible. If we had like artillery or airstrikes, we'd use that. But right now, all we can do is shoot at them and try to get them disrupted, inflict some casualties if we can before we try to make the assault. All right, well, we drove those guys off, so they ran away anyway. And they might run away and we don't get to... No, we just wiped them out, so that worked out. But we'll try to assault those guys since they're already on the run. So we'll end this turn, go into turn 11. Alright, so we're not too worried about over here. Well, just because we can see them, we'll shoot at those guys. Try to drive away that unit. Good. Alright, we drove them away. Nice. And then over here, we'll take this airfield. So we'll move up both of these guys. Both platoons. Alright, so one got drove away. The other one held on, so they'll go ahead and shoot at these guys. Closer range. So we're not assaulting, we're doing ranged fire still. And then try on the last turn, maybe we can squeeze in an assault. They're still shooting us, but they're out in the open. So now our soft damage actually goes up a little, even though they are further away because they're out in the open. But no luck, they're still out there. Try to soften them up. We'd like to get a little D up there showing that they're disrupted. We didn't manage to do it, but we're going to assault their position anyway. Might not be advisable to attack an enemy that's not disrupted yet, but just for demonstration, we're going to do it since this is the very end of the scenario. So to do that, we would just right click on this space with this unit selected, like we're going to move into it. And so this triggers an assault. It could tell us like that we have advantage, disadvantage, but in this case, it's unknown. And then if we come down here, we got buttons for resolve the assault or Alt V, or we can cancel the assault. You can also add to the assault, but for now, we're just going to resolve it and see what happens. All right, so they resisted our assault, but it looks like we didn't take any casualties, so it worked out. If it had been successful, we could have forced them out of that hex and on, but it just depends. Sometimes I've played the scenario once before where one of these platoons ran both the Viet Cong units off the airfield with an assault, but now I can't seem to get any luck doing that again. So we'll just leave it alone. We'll just hold that airfield, and that accomplishes our objectives, and then we can end the scenario. So they get one more turn to shoot at us. Oh, come on, guys. Ran away on the last turn. Alright, so that ends the scenario. We get a little video. A little congratulatory minor victory. Oh, we didn't get the major victory. That's okay. We're just learning. So now we get a situation report at the end. It tells us all about our force status, strength report, and then these are the victory points. So both sides had a few losses. Our losses counted more for points than their losses. And then we had plenty of objective points, but our total came out to 92. So the differential, we were at 92, probably because we took a few too many losses, I guess. But we needed 100 points for a major victory. We were at 92, so pretty close. But that concludes boot camp scenario 1. There's 3 more scenarios to go through, so that's at least 3 more videos coming your way, stepping through those. So I just jumped over here real quick to peek at boot camp 2. So it's called Building a Firebase. In this first video, we learned how to move units, how to engage in ranged combat, how to do an assault, about taking objectives and some of the UI. But mostly we were just using basic infantry to do all of that. In boot camp 2, we will learn how to use vehicles, so how to load and unload from vehicles, how to get reinforcements, how to do engineering tasks with our combat engineers, and how to build a firebase. And then we'll also get to use some artillery, airstrikes, and see transition from day to night, so some night fighting. So a lot of stuff in the next video of all those kind of more specialized things versus just the basic movement that we learned here. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit like if you enjoyed this video, if you got something useful out of it, and stick around. We'll do these next 3 boot camps to learn all the other stuff, and then also probably try out one of the real scenarios after that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.